Welcome back again, everybody, to the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast. It's friends occasionally not disagreeing. Cody here again, and I am checking out the next movie in my James Bond summer watch through. This is Casino Royale from 1967. Now, this was, as I mentioned in some prior podcasts, one of the movies I was most excited to check out this summer because it is one of the two non-Eon films produced by James Bond. So there were some issues over trademark, I believe, as far as who had the ability to make a Bond movie and use that name. And somehow a couple of them have slipped through the cracks, this being one. The other being 1983's Never Say Never Again, starring a one-time off returning Sean Connery. But we'll get to that much later in the summer here. So Casino Royale, this is a spy spoof, if you will, that has kind of taken this James Bond name through the first four films and the novels and has become popular, very popular as of Goldfinger, the third movie, and onward. And they are going to use that for comedic effect in this one. We have a true ensemble cast for this with, probably no less than 10 people, I would say, sharing scenes together. There is some, expected comedic actors and actresses in this, like a Peter Sellers and Woody Allen's in this, David Niven's, and some other people, but we also get some surprising ones in here as well. Orson Welles, for example, plays the Chiffre, who is the character much later in this watch through in 2006's Casino Royale, is played by Mads Mikkelsen, the card shark. So kind of fun to see him in like a semi-serious role. Orson Welles, was such a big name, radio and TV both back in the 40s, 50s. I think maybe his most iconic one, again, of course, probably is Citizen Kane that he's known for. So it was really fun to see him in here. As well as, a lot of women are given more to do in this than they are in some of the other Bond films proper that we watched through. So this was really an interesting one to check out. Lots to say here as far as the characters, lots to say here as far as the plot and the action in this one. And as always, by the time all is said and done here today, we'll tell you whether this is classic or crap. But I am going to have to explain my result on this one a little bit more than normal. All right, so as a recap here, real quick, we are judging the Bond films based on title, theme, Bond portrayal, Bond women, villains, plot, action, and I'll also share my favorite line with you as well. So much to say here, so much to say. I didn't know what I was getting into, as mentioned. It's a longer film. This does run about 2 hours and change, I believe. So, they had a lot of time to do things with, and they do utilize that time in different ways in this film, such as having, almost like half-hour stories for different characters and then somehow bringing them all together for the end to make a cohesive plot. But we'll talk more about the plot here in just a bit. As far as the title in this, it's Casino Royale, which again is the same title they're going to use in the 2006 version of this with Daniel Craig, but very different movies, very different plots as well with this one. The actual title of this in this film, I'm only going to award 2 points out of 5 for, sadly. And you might be asking yourself why. Like, Casino Royale is a great name for a movie. Unfortunately, in this particular adaptation, the actual scene at the Casino Royale and the actual card game and the things that are taking place there really only encompasses about 10 minutes of the movie. And it's, not where the climax, I mean, it might be, I guess, where the climax takes place at, but it's just not the main focus of the action, the actual casino, which I kind of expected to be a big part of this film, primarily because of the poker / danger scenes that are in the Daniel Craig version kind of pre-influenced what I thought the casino part would be like in this, and it's really not. I mean, Peter Sellers sits down as James Bond to play what do they play, canasta or baccarat? I forget, one of the two. It's not poker like it is in the newer version against Orson Welles' character Le Chiffre. And they play like three hands of cards, and he cleans the guy out, and that's the whole poker scene. And it's very quick, very brief. I was very surprised by that part. So great title for a movie. It works really well for the later movie, but doesn't work so well here for this one. So 2 out of 5. The theme for this movie, as it started up, it did have kind of their version of a spoofy, iconic intro with the silhouettes, and we kind of got the weird, geometric art style that's taking place on here, like there is on all the other Bond films as well. And this one had like a big brassy sound to it as the song was playing, and I'm thinking to myself immediately, like, is this Herb Albert? And sure enough, look, a couple screens later, it does say, main title by Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass. And I was like, well, at least I could tell who that was. Very fun song. I don't know that anybody can listen to some Herb Albert and not put a smile on their face. So it's a good song. It's not as iconic. It's not quite as immediately catchy or memorable as some of the actual Bond themes, but still a lot of fun. So I'm going to go 7 out of 10 for the theme on this one for Casino Royale's theme. Okay, then we get into the actual movie 5 points here, and or 5 categories, I should state. These are harder to rate, and I want to upfront here say I'm judging this film for this review based on the same criteria that I have been using for all the other Bond films, because what I'm doing here is a watch through of all the media, all the Bond films and the spoofs of the Bond films produced, not counting like Austin Powers, for example, but the actual ones that feature James Bond. So I'm going to grade this and rate this based on those 7 criteria. And unfortunately, this movie is going to suffer a little bit because of that. But I'll have some wrap-up thoughts here at the end when we look at the totals and things like that. So next up is the portrayal of Bond in this film for 15 points. So they go a little different in this one by starting off by having David Nivens as a retired Bond who has quit the spy slash secret agent slash government work arena due to losing his lover, the Mata Hari, who is a real life famous spy, which was kind of an interesting inclusion to bring somebody real into this. And that's where I thought the film was going to go. They take like the first 40 minutes, I would say, getting him back into the government again to have him take over MI6 essentially in this version. And he comes up with this brilliant plan, which is to confuse the agents of SMERSH, the evil villains in this movie, to not know who Bond is because they had apparently given away the 007 and the James Bond name to a new agent because they wanted the world to know that there was still a James Bond out there doing his thing. And, kind of reminded me of like when Batman would retire or something, and then they'd have Azrael or Dick Grayson or somebody take over his mantle in the comics. But what he comes up with is this plan to really confuse the evil villains by naming all of the agents 007 and James Bond. And so we get some interesting work here of not only men, but also a few of the female characters at different points referred to as James Bond and 007. So we get a combination of a few people here. They hire one guy because he's particularly attractive to women. Peter Sellers' character comes in here as also James Bond as well. We have Woody Allen playing Jimmy Bond, James Bond's nephew. And all of these people together, I guess, are playing James Bond. So it's hard to rate this one on my scale for this reason. There isn't, one singular character that plays James Bond in this movie. And as I was saying, there's, almost like mini sections of this movie where we have like the David Nivens part at the beginning. We have Peter Sellers having quite a few scenes in this. There's even a character named Mata Bond, who is supposedly the illegitimate daughter of James Bond and the Mata Hari. And she steals like a good half hour of the movie with her storyline. And we have just all these little tiny plots that do add up to some crazy, zany, confusion-y parts at the end. But there's not really one person that plays just James Bond as I thought there was. I thought David Niven's played the only Bond in this movie, but that's not true. They all do a pretty good job with their roles, though, so tough one to grade, but I'm going to say 12 out of 15. They all do a pretty admirable job with the role they're given in this, although there's not, as I said, one person that plays Bond. So 12 out of 15 on Portrayal of Bond. Give it a B. Bond women, the Bond girls in this film. So there's actually a lot of Bond ladies in this. We have Mata Bond, who again is kind of his daughter, I suppose. We have a version of Vesper Lynd, who is a character played by Eva Green in the Daniel Craig version of this much later. Very different role here in this one. This is a really interesting casting choice as well because they went out and got Ursula Andress back to play another character in the Bond franchise. So she was Honey Rider in the first movie, Dr. No. She's back again, and she is playing Vesper Lynd in this one. And to her credit, shows much more of her acting chops here. It's a much bigger role for her, probably even than Honey Rider was. She probably had a few more years to season herself, probably as an actress as well by this point, I would guess, but she does a much better job here. We have another character named Miss Good Thighs, which is pretty on the nose, I would say. And then Money Penny in this particular version is, he kind of flirts with her in the Sean Connery versions, but in this version, the actress they have as Money Penny is super good looking. Oh my gosh, she's so good looking. But because of the way the plot is structured, they each get a little bit of screen time, but they don't get a lot of screen time. And no one gets too much screen time to focus on them. I guess Mata Bond, the daughter, I guess, gets the most screen time here. But it's hard to say any of them stole the show necessarily because there's so many different women they split the time between. And there's another lady at the beginning, too, who is the focus of like the first 40 minutes, who is like this mom of, I don't even know what she said, 12 daughters, who's trying to woo Bond as well and becomes infatuated with them. That's a whole nother side plot. And I didn't even catch her name. But so all things said, I'm going to say this is about a 12 out of 15 for the ladies. Great variety here. And not really a singular chance for one of them to shine, as it were. But some good performances, again, with this ensemble cast. Villains in this film. Well, we have a lot of talk about this card guy who never loses, and we find out it's because he's losing. This is Le Chiffre, who is Orson Welles again. And he's really the one that's mentioned. We do get the hint of like the number one from Spectre type thing here from Smersh. There is this shadowy figure who's only really mentioned like once or twice in passing in this movie until we finally get the scene at the end where we find out the villain in the movie, Dr. Noah, as they call the villain here, is actually Woody Allen. Woody Allen turns out to be the villain, which is humorous, but it's kind of funny because we're to believe in this movie that he created this criminal empire and yet is unable to talk around his uncle, James Bond, and also is unable to, walk around a room without tripping and falling on several different things. So he's just kind of played his extreme comedic effect once they reveal that Woody Allen is Dr. Noah. But we're to believe that he also had the capability to start a worldwide criminal organization. That didn't really fully make sense. I guess it's not unlike, a Dr. Evil from Austin Powers type setup. But really, the Orson Welles part, I was just disappointed in. I like to see him in the different avenue he had to play with here, but I expected a lot more for as much as they hyped up the card game and this guy who could never lose, and he had like infrared glasses. I was letting him see the cards, and then they swapped those out. And as I said, he basically lost in like 3 hands, and that was the end of his main part of the show. He tried to do a little bit more after that in terms of like kidnapping Bond and Vesper Lynd, I believe. He captured one of the ladies. I think it was Vesper Lynd. And the agents of Schmersh kill him very quickly right after that. So, Orson Welles' actual screen time in this probably is about 6 minutes, which maybe that's why he took the role, because it didn't really seem like something Orson Welles would do. But I was expecting a little bit more. So there are really no memorable villains in this film, sadly. And for that reason, I have to go down all the way down to 5 out of 10 on this for villains. Just even of the ones I've watched so far, this is pretty forgettable as far as villains go. Okay, on to the plot for 30 points and the action for 15 points. Lots to say here for the plot. As mentioned, this is really a bunch of tiny focuses where we get the Niven story with the girls and the mom who wants him at the beginning. We get the Peter Sellers angle later on. And we get even a little bit of Vesper Lynn. We get the Mata Hari daughter, Mata Bond part where she's at like this old apartment of her mom's, which is at this spy headquarters and has all these secret passages and stuff. That's all pretty cool. We get a lot of really fun special effects in this movie. Some are extremely hokey, which have like, something on wires going across the screen, and you can very easily tell that that's the case. Sometimes some of the special effects actually looked pretty cool, and I'm sure they were all practical. They looked pretty awesome, though. A lot of good jokes in here as the plots would play out, especially for the action scenes. The final scene in particular, where there's just chaos happening, is kind of like they do a shot where a wall's broke down and there's girls painted gold to kind of do the homage comedic for Goldfinger. We have a scene where Native Americans are jumping out of the plane, and one of them's Geronimo, of course, because Geronimo. The last scene in particular is just crazy, where we have the Americans arriving, who are portrayed as straight up cowboys on horses, who are coming in to the final fight scene, which I guess does maybe take place at the Casino Royale. Now that I think about this, but I'm not positive on that. Again, setting not really that memorable here. Native Americans running around. We have animals. I think there's a shot of a goat at one point. There's a monkey running around doing something. I think there was a third animal besides the horses that I can't recall at the moment, but just chaos. There's even a black and white shot of the Keystone Cops type thing going on where they hop in their car and they're headed to the scene. And then we get the final fight where essentially the building explodes. All of the characters die, including all of our James Bonds and our ladies. And then there's a very 5-second scene of them all playing harps in heaven, except Woody Allen, who goes down to hell. And that's how they start rolling the credits on this. So also kind of a zany ending to this, which is they killed off all of the characters, as it were, at the end of this movie. But there are some cool twists and turns in this. There is a few moments where you're kind of not sure who some of the ancillary characters are working for, if they're good, if they're bad, type things. The character plots that we are given, those little mini arcs in this, are kind of fun. The first one with David Nivens is kind of boring, where he's at I don't even know what it is, the widow's house, I guess. Peter Sellers stuff is pretty good, where he's pretending to be all super suave and impress the ladies. That's pretty good. As I mentioned, the Mata Bond stuff, I actually really liked that. And Vesper Lind, as I said, is given more to do here. She kind of runs like an agency, but is pulled in for the money to go help at Casino Royale. She's the one who steals Orson Welles' infrared glasses at the poker game. So, and she does a better job here than she did in Dr. No. So it's kind of all over the place. It's not really what you would expect going into this, I think. There's a lot of time devoted to characters that maybe could have been focused a little bit more on a couple. But as I said, this is really an ensemble piece. It'd be like, I guess, a good comparison would be like a modern, boy, I don't even know what you'd say, like Glass Onion maybe, is like a more recent movie that had a big ensemble cast. And it's kind of like you get a little bit of all of these characters rather than a ton with one character like you did with Knives Out, or with one of the Bond films. When you get all the time with Bond, you don't really get that here because it's split between so many people. So for my rating scale, I got to go with the 18 out of 30 on this for plot. And then leaving us our last numbered category, which is the action here. There's a lot of action in this. Okay, we get skeet shooting, we get gunfights, we get a little bit of hand-to-hand combat, we get the explosions, we get the insane um, chaos of the final scene with everything running around and going crazy. We got all kinds of wacky stuff here, which has already been mentioned, but a lot of action everywhere you look in this one. We get comedy and action, so I got to say 12 out of 15 on this one for action. Really good, keeps you entertained. Okay, and then scoring today, we're taking a look here at our categories added together. We have 12, 18, 5, 12, 12, 7, and 2. It's going to bring us a score today of 68 for Casino Royale, which does make it our fourth best movie out of the 5 we've reviewed so far. And I want to talk about that for a second because by my scale that I'm grading the summer Bond movies on, that would officially give this the label of crap by 2 points. However, that is purely if you look at this as a James Bond film, which is what I'm doing for the summer here and using the criteria as such. I would encourage people to watch this film, which kind of goes against the whole classic or crap criteria. But if you look at this as a 60s ensemble comedy, this was a pretty fun movie and probably worth a watch. So I would encourage you to actually watch this, even though I officially have given it a crap label as a Bond movie here with a 68 out of 70. Performances are really good in this, particularly enjoyed. I don't know who played Mata Bond, but I thought she did a really good job. Ursula Andress did a better job in this, as I said, than she did in Doctor No. So she was kind of fun to give her a second chance in the series here. Peter Sellers was pretty good in this as well. David Niven's isn't given a ton to do in the big picture, but is impressive. He creates a Bond that has a stutter for the first part of the movie, and then he loses the stutter once he becomes the head of MI6. And it was such a good stutter that I questioned whether or not that was actually how the actor spoke, because he would talk like that every once in a while, but very fluidly. And when he dropped that, you could see, wow, this guy really was just doing a voice the whole time. It's pretty cool. Okay, so I would recommend that you take a look and watch this. And even the music, like I said, is good with Herb Alpert, etc. This is all a lot of fun. All right, as far as last thing here for this film, my favorite line, I went with James Bond talking to one of the ladies here in the film, and he says, "Beauty is only skin deep." And she says back, "Do you want to do some skin diving?" Which I thought was both erotic and also funny. So that was a good line. All right, well, that is going to wrap up all things here for the original Casino Royale, one of the 2 non-Eon films here for James Bond for the summer watch through. So I really enjoyed that one. That was available. I just got it off Amazon, rented it there, so you could check that out wherever you want to. It's not included in my DVD box set, of course, because it's not officially part of the recognized canon by the Salzman Broccoli films and Ian Fleming estates, and just not part of the actual list of Bond films, but it was one of the 2 that featured James Bond. Now, remember, this one comes out in early 1967. I want to say like April-ish. And it's only 2 months later that we get James Bond back at the movie theater for the final Sean Connery movie for this run, which is You Only Live Twice, another one that I know I've never seen before. Title has me intrigued. I'm not sure what that is about, but we'll take a look at that. Maybe it's about somebody coming back who died. I don't know. Maybe it's about something to do with Bond. I'm not sure, but we'll find out. All right. Well, everybody, this has been another summer watch through of the James Bond 60th anniversary series here with Cody. This has been Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. Again, you can check us out as always on all your favorite social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. You can also check us out wherever it is that you stream your podcasts: Spotify, Pandora, Audible, Amazon, Facebook, iTunes, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, and some others as well. Search for us there. Find us on there. Give us a good 5-star rating. Tell us that you enjoy the episode. You can also check out www.fondpodcast.com for all your things Fond related, including host bios, and also to order some of that sweet, sweet swag featuring the Fond logos. All right, everyone. Until next time, this has been Cody. Take care. We'll see you again soon. Have a good one.